Welcome to the AVAIL Leadership Podcast, where our goal is to help you take your leadership to the next level. My name is Virgil Sierra, and today we're talking with Phil Cooke. Phil is a man of many talents, being a filmmaker, media consultant, television producer, author, and much more. Today, he'll share leadership insight as well as delve into his upcoming book, Maximize Your Influence: How to Make Digital Media Work for Your Church, Your Ministry, and You. Let's get started. Hey, everybody, we're back for another episode of AVAIL Podcast, where we are talking to leaders. You are a leader. That's why you're here listening or watching this podcast. And today we have a great privilege. We are with an amazing leader. We are with a man who has been making a difference for quite some time. Phil Cooke is a filmmaker, media consultant, television producer, and author. He's recently completed his book, Maximize Your Influence: How to Make Digital Media Work for Your Church, Your Ministry, and You. And he has a heart for equipping people to fully utilize the influential value that digital media possesses. Phil, I'm so happy to be here with you on the AVAIL Podcast.
Oh, that's great. I love it. I love anytime I'm together with you, we have a terrific time. So I'm looking forward to this.
Phil, I think before we jump into some questions, especially everything that has to do with digital media, can you just share a little bit about your story?
Yeah, I'm a preacher's kid, actually. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, back in a much earlier time. My dad was a pastor, and I have worked behind the scenes in churches and ministry organizations my whole life. I mean, I filled 10 million communion cups. I've made thousands and thousands of church bulletins back in the old mimeograph machine. I mowed the church cemetery. I've just been behind the scenes my whole life. And I've always had a passion to engage the culture with the gospel. When I was a kid, there was a rage among pastors in our community that they would do crazy things to try to draw attention to the gospel. A lot of gimmicks. They would shave their head if enough kids came to Sunday school, or they would one pastor sat on a pole for 2 or 3 days until he could get Sunday attendance up. People would just do crazy stuff. And I remember even in junior high and high school, kids would say, "Phil, why do these pastors do such stupid things?" And I thought, that's the way they're perceived by the culture. And so I've always had this real burden in my heart for how, this understanding that it doesn't matter how strong we are as Christians. It doesn't matter what our message is. If nobody's listening, we failed. And we have to understand how people perceive us so that they'll open that door to hearing the gospel. So that's always been a real passion of mine. And as, of course, we became a media-driven culture, I got right into that flow. I studied film in college at Oral Roberts University in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And eventually we moved to Los Angeles, California, where we live and work now with our team at Cooke Media Group. And we come along, we produce a lot of our own stuff, but we also have a real heart to help churches, ministries, pastors, leaders, help them navigate this incredibly fast-changing media world that we live in today. So that's kind of where we come from and what we do.
I love it. I love hearing the story because it's really amazing to see how much you've been able to do with Cooke Media Group. And I really feel how much is coming out of what God has placed in you, your wife, your team, and all the people that you guys are kind of leading and coaching. Can you tell us a little bit, Phil, what first made you get involved with digital media, and how has that grown in you since?
Oh, that's a question. I remember when I was in high school, I had a group of friends that wanted to make movies. And, my dad had a Super 8 movie camera, a film camera. That's how old I am. And it would only go for 3 minutes on a reel. But we'd make mafia movies. We'd make scary movies. We'd make frogman movies. We'd make all kind of space movies, all kind of stuff. And when I got to college, I thought, I'm going to take my dad's camera. I'm going to take my films. Maybe I'll find some guys that want to make movies there. And never thought, the thought never occurred to me that you could actually do this for a living. I was just having a great time. And my first day of college, I'm literally unpacking my suitcase. A couple of my movies roll out, and a guy across the hall, Rod Carlson, I'll never forget, said, "Hey, I'm taking a film class. I can show you how to edit those things." I didn't even know you could cut film back in those days. And so that night he took me down to the film department. We were working on my little movie, and the professor happened to be there. He was working on some project late at night. And he was leaving the film department late that night. He stopped and introduced himself to me and said, "Hey, I've been watching your little movie out of the corner of my eye, and I've got students that have been taken for 2-3 years that still aren't this good. Would you mind if I just showed your little film in my class tomorrow?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. If I could sit on the back row." I didn't know what major I was going to do. I thought about being a piano major because, when you're a preacher's kid, that's kind of a requirement. So I just didn't know what to do. But I said, "Sure, show my movie. I'll sit in your class." And so I sat on the back row the next day. He showed my movie, and trust me, it was not anything to scream about. But after it was over, they discussed it. This class talked about my little movie. And I'll tell you, this thought occurred to me is probably the most crystal clear moment of revelation I've ever had in my whole life. And this thought occurred to me that if I can do something with a camera that makes people talk like this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. And so I literally changed my major that day. I enrolled in film and television, and I have never looked back. And the whole digital media world just kind of came along in the process. Back when I was doing it was big primetime TV specials and big movies, and the independent film movement finally came in, and then digital media started evolving. And so I've just tried to keep on the front end of all these changes that have happened out there. And it's been an interesting journey. That's for sure.
I'm sure you have a lot of story. If we had more time, we could go into some of the stories.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go right now into the story of what inspired you to write this most recent book, Maximize Your Influence, How to Make Digital Media Work for Your Church, Your Ministry, and You.
Well, when the COVID-19 pandemic happened and churches were locked down, I thought, hey, we'll be out of business. Nobody's going to call us anymore. But suddenly we were flooded with calls because pastors and ministry leaders had no idea what to do. They didn't know much about live streaming. We've been working with clients for years, live streaming their services. But so many pastors had virtually ignored that. In fact, I've had pastors come up to me and say, "Phil, I don't mind live streaming my service, but that's not real ministry." Well, let me tell you, when the COVID shutdown happened, they completely changed their tune. And so we started getting calls. And a few months in, I started recognizing that, seminaries do a great job of teaching pastors the Bible, teaching them doctrine, teaching them how to preach and manage a church, but they don't teach them anything about communication, about media. And we live in an age today where that's so vitally important. So I started working on this book based on a lot of stuff I've written on my blog at philcooke.com, started adding things to it, particularly in light of that streaming shutdown that was going on and how to make that more effective. And I cover everything in the book from, websites, book publishing, short videos, social media, even how to speak to a digital generation. This culture has changed so much in the last 20 years that pastors and leaders need to understand how that change has happened. And so I came out with a book really designed to be a reference to sit on every pastor or ministry leader's desk when they're faced a challenge. It's not a technical manual about how to build a website or how to launch a social media strategy. It's more what leaders need to know, what they need to know, how to get involved, how to get your message out there. I mean, the stakes are really high these days, and we need to understand how to leverage media if we're going to get our message heard.
That's good. We're reaching a lot of leaders here, Phil, a lot of pastors, ministry leaders, people that have some kind of influence. And I really think that some leaders actually think, and I'm thinking of pastors and friends that I have that might think, that's just not my thing, right? Media, and why would you say, Phil, that being involved in media matters? If I'm a leader, why should this be important to me?
Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, the Apostle Paul built the foundation of the early church using the media technology of his time, which was letters. Then along 1500 comes along and Johannes Gutenberg invents this amazing printing press. Martin Luther, an obscure monk in Germany, realized its potential and became the best-selling author in the history of the world at the time. And so I think throughout history, we've seen Christians step up to the plate. I mean, at the turn of the last century, the American Bible Society in New York had 7 steam-driven printing presses. I mean, that was more than any organization anywhere in the world had at the time. They were the leaders in understanding how to use technology to get the word of God out to people. And so I just think that, we wouldn't take a pastor seriously today who said, Phil, I'm not into books. I don't think books are very important to a life in ministry. We wouldn't take that guy seriously at all. Well, I think in the future, we're not going to take seriously somebody who said, Phil, I just don't take social media seriously. I don't think websites matter. I don't think short videos are important. They've just become a part of the language of our culture. And I think if we really are serious about impacting this culture today, we need to understand how the media works. One of the things that's kind of funny is most of us think, when the digital revolution happened a number of years ago, it was about getting a new TV set. Let me tell you, it is so much more than that, because it's impacted education, business, medicine, missions. It's impacted everything you can possibly imagine. So I think this digital revolution is going to be much more significant and far-reaching than the printing revolution, the print revolution that happened in the 1500s. I just really believe that this is much greater than people think. It's allowing us to reach an audience you could never reach. I mean, during the shutdown, I had a pastor call me in the South here in the U.S. He pastors to 900 people. And he said during the shutdown, he said, it's really funny, Phil, before the shutdown, we had 28 subscribers to our YouTube channel. Now, 3 months into the shutdown, we have 23,000. He said, wow. we regularly get 30 to 40,000 people a week watching our services. Now, we're a 900-member church, but we regularly get 30 to 40,000 people a week watching our services online. And he said, so far, 1.5 million people have watched my Easter message. So when you look at that, you realize pastors and leaders who embrace media, they have such a great potential for getting the word out to so many more people outside the walls of their church than ever before. So, I don't try to shame or guilt pastors and leaders into it, but I do wish they'd put their toe in the water and at least try it, because I think in so many cases, I found pastors who did that, discovered, oh my gosh, this is an entirely new world that's opened up to me and sharing my message, and they never, ever look back.
That's so good. So would you say this is why you wrote the book?
Oh, totally. Why I wrote the book. I mean, my book is in many ways for novices. It's also for more experienced people, but it's really a book on how to engage in these areas. Short films. I'll give you a great example. Short videos have become the #1 marketing tool in America. 2 to 4 minute videos have become incredible. It's funny that it's kind of sad, but up until from the beginning of the internet to now, the most watched thing online has been pornography. But as of last year, for the first time in the history of the internet, watching short videos has exceeded pornography. In fact, there's more internet bandwidth taken up with short videos than anything other than Amazon Prime or Netflix. So the question is, how could a short video tell the life-changing story of someone whose marriage was transformed, who got saved or delivered in your church, whose life was changed? We need to tell those stories because people are eating them up and sharing them through social media. There's so many ways like that using media. It doesn't take a big budget. I mean, we all have a television studio in our pocket. It's called an iPhone. And if we use that effectively, in fact, let me tell you, it's funny. There are 2 film festivals in America right now for feature movies made on iPhones. So let me tell you, you have much more power in your pocket than you think. So whether you think you have the budget or the staff, you can do some remarkable things without any budget at all.
I want to kind of mention something here, Phil, because I want to be honest, right? Sometimes what you see on Christian television or what you see sometimes coming from churches, it's not the best. I don't know if it would be quality or it's not excellent or it's not relevant. Maybe that's the word. I don't know. Can you just shed some thoughts into that? Because I don't want to offend, but I just think if we're real, sometimes we don't have the best.
You're right. It can also often be quite embarrassing. But one of the reasons is in the very early days of media, back in the radio days and the television days, when people like Billy Graham or Oral Roberts or Fulton Sheen on the Catholic side really embraced the media, most of the people that embraced it in those early days were not producers. They weren't creative people, designers or writers. They were pastors or preachers. And so they didn't know anything about how to put together a great television program or an engaging radio program. They just had this desire to preach the gospel. So often that launched, in so many cases, that launched what we call Christian media today. The problem is we've had some time to catch up now, and there's a new generation of really talented, creative Christian producers and directors and writers and designers and actors out there. And it's time we really, really did raise the bar. And I encourage everybody that's involved in Christian television or Christian radio, it's time to move past the embarrassment and try to do something really quality. I mean, the truth is, as I said before, I don't care how great your message is. If nobody listens, we failed. So if poor production quality, if a bad presentation stops people from listening to your message, that's your fault. That's your fault. That's not the world's fault. It's not the devil's fault. It's your fault. So I think we just need to embrace that responsibility. Get advice from people that understand how to make compelling programs, how to make compelling social media, how to do short videos. Get good advice and try to be, as good as anything out there. I mean, we're Christians. We worship a creator God who chose to introduce himself in the first verse of the Bible as a creator, and we are made in his image. We shouldn't be producing cheesy, corny videos and social media and television programming. We should be doing some remarkable things out there, because that's really how that hooks people, is a powerful way to get them to open that door to listen to our message.
100% agree with that. So Phil, something that's really neat, you've produced programming in 65 countries around the world. You have worked with creatives your entire career. Why is it important for leaders, ministry leaders, pastors, to know how to lead, inspire, and motivate creative people effectively? Because I think that's where the key is.
It's really true. A number of years ago, IBM did a study of CEOs. They sent a questionnaire out to about 500 major CEOs across the country. And they asked, what is the one single most important thing that leaders need to know for the future? And almost unanimously, it was creativity. Creativity. We live in a creative economy. Creative people are the movers and shakers of the world we live in today. They decide who the influencers are. They decide what influence that is out there. And so I think if there's one thing we need to learn as leaders, is learn how to harness, inspire, and motivate creative people. Again, pastors, they don't get this in seminary. I've included a lot about that in my book, Maximize Your Influence, because I do think it's so incredibly important. I think you may only have a designer on your team, a graphic designer, or maybe you have a video person on your team, or maybe you have a bigger communications team at your church. Whatever it is, I believe that we really need to understand how to lead those people. It's funny, my friend John Maxwell and some other fantastic leadership teachers have been out there for years creating some just amazing leadership resources. Sam Chand is another, Patrick Lencioni. Guys have created some major leadership resources out there. But the truth is, not many people talk about leading creative people. And trust me, we're a different breed. We're a little bit different breed. We're different from the accounting department. We're different from the children's program and other things. We're a little different breed. So it takes some different techniques to try to really maximize what you're getting. And here's the thing. If you're willing to do that, they can amplify your message to places you could never in a million years get to. I mean, a pastor by himself is pretty much going to preach to whoever's in front of him on Sunday. But a graphic designer, a writer, a video person, a webmaster, they can take that message and make it available to hundreds, thousands, even millions of people beyond the walls of that church. So having that desire to lead creative people, I think, is a first step toward getting your message really out there in a so much bigger way.
What would you say are some of those challenges? Again, in my case, it's interesting because I'm a musician. I kind of grew up kind of in a lot of art and creative stuff. So my team tells me, Pastor, we love you because you understand the importance of audio and video and all that. Yeah. But why do you think there's so much challenge? Because I think there's frustration sometimes when a pastor or a CEO leader is like trying to lead this creative group of people, but they're not connecting or they're not understanding. What do you think are some of those challenges?
Well, I think number one, we need to value creativity. We need to create a culture where creativity is valued. My dad is a good example. He was a pastor. He had about 2,000 or 3,000 volumes in his personal library. Didn't own a single novel, not one. It was all nonfiction. He wanted the facts about stuff. He was driven by facts, but he didn't really understand the potential of creatively using, creatively sharing those facts in a really compelling way. And so I think today, most pastors are in a similar boat. They really don't understand the value of creativity. So they haven't invested in a creative atmosphere. So I think number one, build that kind of atmosphere. Number two, be flexible. The creative team is not exactly like everybody else. Maybe they want to work a little different hours. And here's the thing, if you can be flexible with them, the harvest you'll reap is really quite amazing. Like me, I do my best work between 6 a.m. and noon. Afternoon, I can do podcasts or interviews or phone calls or meetings, but intense creative work, I need to do it early in the morning. My wife, Kathleen, is different. She gets wired late at night. She keeps rock star hours. So we've had to work that out in our marriage. But the truth is, understanding the flexibility of how creative people work is absolutely critical. Another thing I'd say is create an environment of, I don't know, what I really want to say is create a kind of a safe environment, a stable environment. We want creative people to be wildly creative, but they're not going to be wildly creative if they're concerned about the organization going out of business, if they're being threatened with their job, if this new logo doesn't work. So many leaders feel like the way to motivate people is just say, hey, if this campaign doesn't work, we're all out of business. Let me tell you, that's the worst way to motivate a creative person. They need to be in a stable environment at work so their creative stuff can be really, really amazing. So think about that. I think that's really, really important as you do. And I think the last thing I'd probably say about creative people, and there's so many more, and I talk about that in my book, but there's so many more things. But I think one of the key elements of working with creative people is have fun. Just have a fun environment. You're never going to be productive. You're never really going to maximize your creativity if you're not in an environment that has fun. I know that, there are visionary leaders out there, but there are organizations that they work in that have such an oppressive environment. I've actually been to ministry organizations I've consulted with over the years that the minute I walk on their campus, you almost feel the oppression. People are sniping at each other behind their backs. They're backbiting. They're criticizing each other. It's just an oppressive culture. Let me tell you, I don't care how creative the vision is of the leader. It's never going to manifest itself in that kind of environment. So having an environment that values creativity and it values fun, I think is a real critical thing at your church or your ministry or your business, because that's going to inspire people to do amazing things.
I love that. I think it's great advice. Leaders, listen and learn from someone who's been there and done that. I love this, Phil. I think what you're sharing here is so key, especially in the season and in these times that we're living. I want to jump on something, and I just think I think it's helpful, even though somebody might think I'm being cruel. But what are some mistakes that you see out there regarding media? I think it's good when we talk about it because we realize that a lot of us do it and we can get better. But what are some of the mistakes you see out there?
Oh, it's true. I joke sometimes that I'd like to start a museum of bad Christian media, but I can't find a building big enough. As I say, I'm not cynical. It doesn't make me cynical at all. I think these are really good-hearted people trying to do the right thing, but most of them haven't been trained. So yeah. I think many of the mistakes are we get the message right, but we don't understand the power of packaging. In a media-driven culture, packaging matters. One study recently by Microsoft indicates that we have about, when we meet someone for the first time or engage with a product or engage with a television program or something else, we will give it between 4 and 8 seconds, which incidentally is about the length of a goldfish's, what's the word I'm looking for? Their
attention span.
Attention span. That's it. A goldfish's attention span is what we've been reduced to. It's unbelievable. So I think the critical thing is we need to understand that the package matters. I tell pastors all the time that in a 4 to 8 second world, I'm glad your sermon's anointed. I'm glad your worship is amazing. But in that kind of world, what's the parking experience like? What's your lobby look like? Who's the first person a new visitor meets when they walk in the door? Trust me, people today are making decisions long before they ever get to their chair. And so I think we just need to understand that first impression matters more than ever. I was at a church on the East Coast recently, and they were rightly concerned about kids' safety. And I think that's really important. They were really concerned. However, when you walked in the front door of the church on Sunday, there's a police car sitting right next to the front steps. You walk in, there's 2 uniformed officers in the lobby. Over to the left, there's a giant high security desk with big video monitors with plainclothes officers behind that. I mean, you literally feel like you're walking into TSA, not a church. And so I just brought it up with the congregation or with the leadership team, and it never crossed their mind. They never thought about it before. So we have to really take a hard look at the way people perceive us. What is their thoughts when they walk in the building? How do they view our church? Because it's not the same. So I think that's a big mistake is we're not thinking about how other people see us. and we're not thinking how quickly they really engage with us. I think that's just so very, very important. Another thing I would say that we don't do very well is, we try to be all things to all people. This is going to probably make some people angry, but we get the Great Commission kind of confused. Certainly we're supposed to reach the world, but the truth is your church is not going to reach the world. Your ministry is not going to reach the world. If you think it is, I'm sorry, but you're failing. The truth is, we need to find out who are the people you can reach. Who is that low-hanging fruit that because of your message, your style, your community, the people that come to your church, your geographic location, who are those people that we are really, really good at getting in this door and focus on them? And the truth is, if every church in America did that, we really would reach the world. So I think that we have to understand our place out there and who the people are likely to come and hear our message, focus on those instead of trying to dilute our message and try to reach everybody, because we're just never going to be able to do that. I'm sorry, I kind of start preaching when I get on these subjects because I think it's so important that people understand this today. It drives me nuts that pastors and leaders just don't get that.
I think it's great. I think, finding that sweet spot, that's just that could be a whole podcast right there. Just how do we find our sweet spot and understand who it is that we're called and designed and strategically positioned to impact, to reach, to transform. I love this conversation, Phil. This is great stuff. Is there a place to learn a little bit about that? Like, can people go somewhere to learn a little bit about techniques and strategies?
Absolutely. I mean, certainly on my blog at philcooke.com, I talk about this stuff all the time. By the way, I'm Phil Cooke with an E, COOKE.com. I talk about this stuff constantly. I live at the intersection of media, faith, and culture. And my passion is to help churches really understand how to navigate this world. And so I'm always writing about how to engage culture on that level and what we need to know about as leaders. And I'm not the techie guy. I'm not really interested in the techie, what's the camera you need to get. Trust me, you can find that out from a typical high school kid in your congregation. I'm not interested so much in those things, although, technology is important. I'm more interested in how we use it and how you as leaders who might be watching or listening to this today, how you as a leader can use social media more effectively, how you can connect with people better, how your live stream would reach more people. I think there's so many areas like that. And I write about it there. I've certainly written about it in my book, Maximize Your Influence. And I've got plenty of other books. Unique, Telling Your Story in the Age of Brands and Social Media is a book I wrote on branding and positioning, how that perception of the culture works, and how as a pastor or ministry leader, you need to understand that if you're going to connect with a potential audience out there. So all those kind of things are really critical. And I'd encourage people to go check it out. It's a really good place to go find that stuff out.
Yeah, I remember in an interview I did with your wife Kathleen, we talked about influence labs and how people can learn more even through that. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, we launched a nonprofit a number of years ago called the Influence Lab because it really came about because so many people reached out to us internationally to learn about media. I'll tell you, even when the church wasn't getting it here in the U.S., internationally, people understood that. And we were getting emails from China and India, Mongolia, Africa, South America, really asking. In fact, it's interesting that during the church lockdown, I would do Zoom teachings. I did a Zoom teaching, a training session for 200 pastors across Russia. Another one with 165 pastors in South America, another one with Portuguese pastors in Portugal, Brazil, and Angola. They're hungry for this kind of stuff. So we were going overseas at our own expense for years, trying to help teach and train. And we decided, let's launch a little small nonprofit to help other people who might want to help fund this kind of effort. And we've done things, for instance, we worked with a church in Cairo, Egypt, that's producing 80 hours of satellite television every month for the Muslim world. And they asked us to come in and bring a social media teacher, a screenwriter, an acting teacher, a director, and a camera operator, and spend a week doing intensive training with their creative team there. And we've done it all over the place. We've been to India multiple times. We've been to Africa multiple times, South America. There's just such a hunger out there. And I encourage you, it's influencelab.com. It's real simple, influencelab.com. I'd love for people to go there and find out about it because it's just an effort to try to raise the kind of funding we need. One of the interesting things that we get to do that I think is, I don't mean to ramble here, but I live and work in Hollywood. And there's some remarkable Christians at very high levels in Hollywood who have come to me and say, Phil, I'm tired of doing stupid movies. I'm tired of doing lame TV programs. How can I use my skill as a producer or a writer, a director, an actor to help Christians understand media more effectively. So, and they've said, look, give me a plane ticket and I'll go anywhere you want in the world for a week and teach and train people how to do it. So we've been able to hook up with real high-level leaders in Hollywood, take those remarkably skilled people to remote places on the planet and teach social media, video, all those kind of things. And it's really making an impact out there.
So good. As we're winding down here in this final stretch of the conversation, Phil, hey, a lot of us are back in our buildings, even though there's still, we're still not completely out of this whole, pandemic situation. We're back in our buildings. Does the live stream still matter?
Absolutely. This is not the time to take your foot off the gas when it comes to your live stream. One of the things I'm seeing out there is that I think a significant number of people will probably cut back physical attendance to, maybe 2 to 3 Sundays a month. Maybe they'll skip showing up at church on, that 4th Sunday, or maybe that 3rd and 4th Sunday, and stay at home and watch the live stream. After all, when Pastor called me and said, Phil, I've spent a year telling people how awesome live stream worship is, how am I ever going to get them back in the building? Well, frankly, it will be difficult. And I think the big challenge is make sure you're doing things in the building that can't possibly be replicated online. Make the building experience so amazing that they're going to want to come back. However, I still believe with all my heart that people are going to want to stay home. Plus, keep in mind, think of the number of people that have been watching your live stream that don't even live in your city or even your state.
Right.
And yet they're watching. One thing I discovered was the number of people that they still will attend their church, but they started liking a lot of other pastors and teachers live streaming on Sundays. So they're watching. I've met enormous numbers of people that watch 4, 5, 6 live streams every week because they're so curious about what other people are teaching. So absolutely don't let up the gas. And the other thing I would say is it's interesting how pastors are rethinking Sunday services in light of this whole lockdown and what we've been through with the live streaming world. I talked to one pastor recently who's going to keep live streaming only for 3 Sundays a month. And on that 4th Sunday, he's going to have a big blowout worship experience on Friday night. Wow. Then on Saturday, he's going to take his church into the street to minister to people. Then Sunday, have a big service at the church, but only do that 1 weekend a month. Another church that I talked to is doing kind of a Catholic daily mass thing where he's getting a group of 300 to 400 people on a Facebook group every morning, doing an hour teaching and worship time. And then over the course of the day, 3,000 to 4,000 end up watching it played back. And he's doing that every single week. And I talked to a pastor recently who's done communion for something like 465 days straight online. And so it's interesting whether you like those ideas or not. It's interesting for me to say, you know what? We've pretty much done church the same way for hundreds of years. Maybe we need to rethink what church is, at least the order of service or the things we do or how we do it. So I think it's really interesting to see pastors kind of rethinking what that model could be and how we could reach this culture more effectively.
That's good. That's good. You mentioned a few ways already. Can we just reiterate, where can listeners connect with you and with Cooke Media Group?
Absolutely. When you go to my blog at philcooke.com, there's plenty of places to connect with me. You can send me an email. There's a way to reach out to me that way. I'm also on social media at Phil Cooke, PhilCooke, Instagram and Twitter. And you can search for Phil Cooke on Facebook. There's just a lot of different ways to get in touch with me. And I encourage you to, if you have a question, I'm thrilled. One of me or one of our team members will get back in touch with you and help you find the answer that you're looking for. And certainly you can go on Amazon, or you can go to influencematters.com and find about our book. Also our team, Cooke Media Group, cookemediagroup.com is out there. And we'd love for you to take a look at that and see what we do, how we come alongside churches and ministry organizations to help them take their media outreach to an entirely new level. It's really interesting to see when the light turns on with pastors and leaders, how effective they can possibly be. So we're thrilled to be a part of that.
So good. Hey, everybody, I want to make sure you really get out there and get the book, Phil's book, Maximize Your Influence, How to Make Digital Media Work for Your Church, Your Ministry, and You. It is going to be very helpful. In fact, you might want to gift it to some of your team members, some of your creative team members. I know it's going to be a great blessing for them. Speaking of resources, Phil, I'm holding here one of the AVAIL leadership journals, the AVAIL journal that comes out.
Talk about a classic
quarterly.
issue.
You see this classic issue I got here?
Absolutely. What a handsome guy.
What do you think? What do you think about the AVAIL journal?
I love it. Actually, I love it. I think you guys have done a brilliant job putting together pastors, leaders, both from the Christian and the secular world. It's interesting. I'm getting perspectives there from a lot of different places on how to be a better leader. And I'm a big fan of all things leader. They've allowed me to send them some articles over the last year. And I want to focus more and more on leading creative people. So maybe we'll put more information in there like that. But I just think it's a great journal. And I encourage people, sign up, get it. You need to, that whole garbage in, garbage out thing is true. What you're feeding yourself is going to help take you to the next level, or it's going to leave you stuck. And I think resources like AVAIL Magazine, AVAIL Journal are absolutely critical in helping you get to the next level in your leadership thinking.
Yeah, so good. I'm holding here one of our past editions. Here's one of your articles, Phil, Behind the Lens, and it also talks about in this AVAIL journal specifically about maximize your influence. There it is. There's the book. You got to get it. There you go. Wow. And hey, if you're listening or watching, you can get a free annual subscription. I just said it, free annual subscription, which means you're going to get 4 of these. They come out quarterly. Amazing resources for leaders by leaders from all different, parts of ministry, marketplace. It's going to be awesome. You're gonna have amazing contributors like Phil Cooke on this cover with amazing articles, and you're not going to regret it. So make sure you go to availjournal.com. availjournal.com, and you can subscribe for your free annual subscription on behalf of the AVAIL team. We can't wait to get that in your hands. Phil, the whole AVAIL team, Dr. Sam Chand, Martine, we really love you and appreciate you. It's so awesome to have an opportunity like this to just hear from you. We just want to honor you and thank you for all the hard work that you've been putting in, but also for contributing and helping us equip leaders with amazing content.
Well, you're very kind. I really appreciate you guys. And I'm so respectful of what you've done, the work you've done out there, and open up so many doors for people. And you've done a remarkable job. So thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Can you just leave a little nugget here in the hearts of the leaders who are connected right now? Just maybe a final thought that you want to just share with them.
If I was going to leave you with the final thought, it would probably be really the key, I think, is understanding just how big this revolution is when it comes to digital media. This is much bigger than we think. This is, as I said, much bigger than a new TV set. It's going to affect every single aspect of our lives. And as Christians, if we're not on the front edge of that, we're going to really vacate that to entirely different thinking, entirely different ideologies, entirely different just belief systems. And so I just really think I would encourage you to do a couple things. If you're a pastor or a leader, number one, pinpoint creative people in your church and encourage them. Really reach out to them, encourage them, help them understand that creativity is important. And if you have young people in your church that are into video or into media, the web or social media, really help them, encourage them, make them feel like there's a real future in the church for those kind of skill sets. I think we as leaders have a responsibility to help pinpoint the next generation, encourage them, and lead them into the next thing. So I just really would encourage you to be on the lookout for those people. Look out for the creative people on your team. Encourage them, motivate them, help show them the potential of what they can do. And I think it will make a dramatic difference, not for your church, not just for them, but for your ministry as well.
I love it. Drop the mic. I love it. What a great conversation this has been, Phil. Thank you so much for spending and investing your time into this AVAIL podcast. And for everybody who's out there connected right now, listening, watching this podcast, thank you so much for taking time to invest in your leadership. I'm so honored on behalf of the AVAIL team to be able to bring this to you. And Phil, once again, thank you for just investing your heart and your passion, your family, your ministry in all that you guys are doing. We can't wait to see what's to come. And everybody who's watching right now, stay connected with us here at the AVAIL Podcast, because you're going to continue to grow in the art of leadership. Remember, every Tuesday, a new episode comes out. Claim your free annual subscription of the AVAIL Journal at availjournal.com. Remember to check out, go to philcooke.com, check out his blog, check out everything that's Cooke Media Group. You're going to love it. It's going to help you. It's going to bless you. On behalf of AVAIL, my name is Virgil Sierra, your AVAIL Media host. Can't wait to see you next time here on the AVAIL Podcast.
We hope you've been intrigued by this conversation with Phil Cooke. Remember to check out Phil's new book, Maximize Your Influence. And you can connect with Phil Cooke at cookmediagroup.com. That's Cook with an E at the end, and at influencelab.com. For more leadership resources, check us out at theartofleadership.com. And make sure to claim your free annual subscription of the AVAIL Journal at availjournal.com. As always, I'm your AVAIL Media host, Virgil Sierra. Muchas gracias. Thank you for connecting with us to learn the art of leadership here at the AVAIL Leadership Podcast.